Wonderful. Welcome, everyone, on the first GFAN call of 2026. Yay, we made it through 2025. That's an achievement for most of us, if not all of us. So thank you for joining us today. We have a busy-ish agenda. We'll be talking about the soon-to-be closed Global Fund replenishment. Some pledges haven't come through yet, and we'll look with some country partners at where we stand and how we can help, specifically in France and the European Union. We'll talk about the year to come. We've done a quick mapping of some of the key global health moments that are on our radar for 2026, and we'll ask all of you to point out anything we horribly forgot. And finally, we'll do a very quick brief on the developing story of US MoUs, which are bilateral agreements between the US and various African countries, 14 signed so far. There's a number of parallel places we can learn more about them, but we just want to make sure that you are paying attention and know where to turn if you want more details. Without further ado, I'll move on to a quick recap of where we are with regard to the missing pledges. So as you might know, the replenishment is not finished, even though it is 2026. But the deadline for pledges to be announced and taken into account through the normal channels for GCA is coming very fast. The next Global Fund board, which is the de facto deadline, even though in practice we probably would want to see 2 weeks at least before the board meeting itself for pledges to be validated. Is mid-February, from the 11th to the 13th. So that will be the official end of the replenishment. And we haven't yet got pledges from France. As a reminder, it was 1.6 billion euros in 2022 with 20% set aside. The European Commission at 715 million in 2022, Sweden at 275 million, and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait, the Gulf countries, which together represented about 100 million in 2022. So we haven't heard from them. And we'll specifically be hearing from advocates working in France, the European Union, to situate us in terms of what are some of the upcoming moments where we could hope to see some action. And how we can support their efforts. And I want to first ask our partners on the call from France. I don't know which order you'd like to make interventions, but I have Anna and Mai. I actually don't know if I've seen Mai joining yet, so it might be Anna first. Hi, Anna.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Great. So for France, the situation hasn't changed since December. So in late December, in a reply to a question from a senator, the French minister of the French MoFA, he said that the French contribution will be much lower and that it would be announced only after the finance bill is adopted. So the finance bill was supposed to be adopted by the end of 2025, but the negotiation at the parliament failed. So there is a temporary budget law adopted in late December, only to keep the country running until the real finance bill is agreed. And now the finance bill is being discussed at the Assembly in a very tense political situation. There is both the left and the far right introducing motions of confidence against the government. And we also know that the Prime Minister has asked to the Minister of Interior to look at the possibility of an early parliamentary election in March. It's maybe only a way to put pressure on the political parties to adopt the finance bill, but it still exists. So this means that there is no guarantee that our French finance bill will be adopted before the board by the end of January. So no guarantee that France will be able to announce its contribution on time. We have warned the Prime Minister office, the MoFA office, And also the members of parliaments, they are aware that without a pledge by the end of January, the French contribution can be included in the funding that will be distributed to the countries. And we will continue our advocacy during this final stretch, the months to go. But yes, there is unfortunately nothing really new. I don't know if my colleagues want to add from France, wants to add
Yeah,
something.
I think my joined the call. Maya, do you have something to add to Anna's remarks?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. No, I think Anna, you summed it up very well. So just maybe saying that the strategy is to focus on the Prime Minister at the moment. So we should have a budget in time. It should be before the end of January. But the question is, what will be the political decision of how the budget is allocated? So we're trying to like find allies within his party, people that know him well, who can be our spokesperson and try and, influence his decision making on how the budget is allocated. There is space for France to make an ambitious pledge, but it's a political decision. So obviously it's always complicated. So yeah, we're looking at op-eds and letters from MPs, all that to make sure that we have a pledge as soon as possible.
Thank you, Maya. And do we have any of the French colleagues who want to add something that would have either been missed or a different view on some of the things that were shared? Raise your hands. So if not, I do have a question, which is that neither you, Anna, or Maya have mentioned the possibility of a political pledge by the president regardless of the budget. Is that because it's completely off the table and we know that, or is that still something that is considered a possibility?
I can answer Anna if you want. So this is what they've been saying. They don't want to make a pledge when they don't have a budget. We know that there have been like confidential conversation between the Global Fund and France, and they already floated a number, right? I think we already said the 750 million euros number has already been floated because that's what's in the budget. But there is a risk that the budget will be lower. Unfortunately, there is no risk that the budget will be higher. So this is why it's not been floated. But this being said, given the current political situation, there will be a budget by the end of January. So they will be able to make a pledge. So we're probably looking at a 750 million euro pledge, which is the number they've already been floating around. And this is something the president won't make politically because it's not a good pledge. So there's not going to be like a big announcement because they don't want any backlash, obviously.
Thanks a lot, Maya. Anna, anything to add?
No, unfortunately, I think.
All right. Do we have any questions from anyone for French colleagues regarding how to help them do their work in the next couple of weeks, or any interrogations you have around the French pledge? I see Sophie in the chat talking about a letter written by the three civil society delegations. Sophie, do you want to explain what the letter was? Because I'm not reading fast enough.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. It was just to urge them to make a pledge, and to make it soon, and to ensure that it was a good pledge, as good as possible. But the responses, as has been said, that the budget was not approved and that we should be lobbying parliamentarians to get that approved so that they could move forward. So, if that's something that's worthwhile, would be good to hear. And also we would need some direction on contacts, but it's seeming like it's more of a national internal thing than anything we can have influence over.
Diana, is that the right read that external pressure, letters, etc., wouldn't be productive at this point? Or do you feel like there's value in reaching out to MPs?
No, sorry, Anna, go on.
No, I will go after, sorry.
No, I mean, it's a good question. I think pressure on MPs is always valuable. as I said, the strategy is to focus on the prime minister. Pressure on Macron at this stage is no longer useful because the file is no longer on his desk. So it's really the prime minister. So yeah, I mean, I would say it's always useful. And I don't know if you agree.
Yes, sorry. I think the government since the beginning of the examination of the finance bill is always blaming the parliament is the one responsible for the finance bill, and so I think as Maya said before, the focus is really now on the government because our allies at the parliament, they are already really engaged and they know everything. It's more yes, if we do something, it's more to the working with the putting pressure to the prime minister office and to the French MoFA office, I think.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks a lot, May. Thanks a lot, Anna. And I wanted to call on our colleagues working in the European Union. I think it is Delphine, to tell us about the situation there, whether a pledge is likely before the board meeting, and what kind of level of pledging we should be expecting. Delphine.
Thanks, and I see that Eloise is online as well from the One campaign. So if she wants to complete. I feel bad because I want to give hope on 14th of January, but we don't know. So end of December, there were some attempts from the Commission to unlock some budget, and this failed because that specific line, I won't bore you with details, but that specific line depended on the member states' decision. Because basically they had committed money to a line that they hadn't paid for, and they didn't, of course, none of them had budgeted it. So the countries like France, Germany, Belgium said, we don't have money to add. So that didn't work. It's not going to work. And that was one option, not to find the overall amount, but to find some of the budget. So that failed. So our understanding is that they were waiting for the beginning of the year to see what's left, like kind of close the accounting and see what's left in the current multi-year financial framework, which ends next year. And then we start with the new multi-year financial framework, which is under negotiation and will be under negotiation all of this year. We're not going to have a new one until next year. So we've been told, oh, we can't commit before we have a new multi-year financial framework. But of course, that won't come this year. So we know that they have to commit before. So it's very political. In the old days, the same president has made political pledges without the budget behind it. And it seems she's more reluctant to do it this time. And this could be just because she doesn't have as much financial support currently from member states, but also the parliament is very divided. So we are still hoping for political pledge from her. The civil society and the Global Fund Secretariat are pushing for a political pledge at Davos next week. But there's no indication whether that's realistic. All that the Secretariat has heard is they think a bilateral with Petersens next week in Davos is a good idea. That doesn't mean she will announce anything. I know that there's a hope that maybe a private sector event next week at Davos could be helpful and could also offer a platform. So this is all being proposed, but we have very little feedback from the Commission because they just don't know what she's going to do. We are all pushing, so we have now a massive poster campaign in the metro around the parliaments and around the Commission where decision makers are passing. We're doing a last push on social media. The British mission to the EU is pushing as well. So everyone's pushing, but we don't know. We have been told before the holidays that more letters aren't helpful. And to some extent, they say kind of counterproductive in the sense that basically the president passes them on to the health team, but without telling them what to say. So it's not extremely helpful because they don't get any kind of guidance on what would be helpful. We have had, I see the comment from Adrian. We have had MEPs writing to the president. To my knowledge, they haven't heard back. So she knows. And I think we don't need more people talking, because what we keep being told is, we know we want to give you money, we're just looking how to do it. So yeah, we've tried so many voices, like civil society, former ministers, so many different people, former commissioners. It's very hard to see what else could make an impact at this point. In terms of, I think one of the questions you had asked is in terms of amount. So we don't know, but we don't think it will be a decrease. We think it's at least the same amount, because we've never been told about a decrease until now in any of our conversation. We had been told, when was that? In November, I think. So I'm getting lost of the dates. I think in November, mid-November, we had been told an increase was being considered. But as there's no budget behind, it's still very unclear. But so we're between 715 and 800 is our understanding. It would be a big and really bad surprise if we had a cut. Saying that, of course, a lot of member states of the European Union have cut, so it's also not a great signal that's being sent. But von der Leyen has announced a health resilience initiative, so we think she can't cut, because she's supposed to announce and make this announcement reality. So starting with a cut to the biggest partner that they have in global health would not send a really nice signal for a new initiative. So that's why I think we can be confident on the amount. Don't know, Eloise, if there's anything I've missed.
No, I think it's a comprehensive summary, and yeah, so Delphine and I, we speak almost on a daily basis about this, so she has all the intel that I have as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Eloise. Thanks a lot, Delphine. Pauline, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to add a few points on a few comments that we have. I mean, on Davos, yes, I mean, we have a delegation going, we have a private sector event that is being organized, that would, mainly like for private sector announcement and discussion. It's including like the 20 years anniversary of RED. And if we had any opportunity for a pledge, France, EC, but also, who knows, like Indonesia as well, that is a remaining pledge in case the president would go to Davos and in case they would be ready to make a pledge. So, I mean, that is, indeed, I mean, everything is ready for any potential pledge. Now, as, colleagues have, very well explained, we're not in a, very promising context for those. But I mean, let's keep hope. And in case there will be an opportunity for a pledge announcement of Davos, definitely, the logistic or the factor is not the issue. And then just to add, I mean, on Sophie's comment, the way I would also interpret it, saying, the comments you received about targeting the MPs, I would also see it as, sending you, throwing the ball to somebody else, because frankly, at least, I mean, like the outreach that I've seen by the different advocacy partners in France with MP this year has been, reached to the maximum. I've rarely seen so much outreach. So to be discussed, I mean, if like additional outreach that then would help move the needle at the PM level, but already really a lot of outreach has been done with French MP this year. Over. And sorry not to bring a more optimistic note on in the discussion.
Thanks, Pauline. Anyone else who has questions for colleagues from Europe? I think most of the questions at the in the chat have been addressed. Okay, I don't see any questions. We can move on to our overview of the next few big moments of the for global health this year. And I will leave the floor to Priyanka to talk about this beautiful graph that we've made in honor of global health in 2026.
Thank you so much. So first up, we have the Davos Summit, which is coming up really, really soon. We've heard from the grapevine that there might be Gulf donors who would be pledging at it, but we are not sure of the intel. So in case others on this chat or group have any intel, please do share. Apart from that, we have the Feb Global Fund board meeting coming up really, really soon. And as we know, this is going to be a packed year in terms of the Global Fund board meetings, because we only had one board meeting in the last year, and the one that was supposed to happen towards the fag end of last year has been moved to Feb for a longer replenishment cycle. So in 2 weeks, as we have done in the past, we will have a briefing call for the Global Fund board meeting, and then immediately after the closure of the board meeting, we'll have a debriefing call as well. So stay tuned for that and the information around that. In March, we are meeting, a few of you already know, for our GFAN annual strategic meeting. So that's happening in March. Apart from that, the other highlights are, of course, that IAS is happening in Brazil this year, though we still need to figure out and ascertain the kind of participation and the way that we would be showing up as GFAN in that space. In case you already have plans or are considering to be there, please do share it with us, and we can together brainstorm around how valuable, how important, and how crucial it might be for Global Fund looking at advocacy in a non-replenishment year. Apart from that, we have two HLMs this year, the HIV HLM and the PPPR HLM, though the exact processes and dates are not yet clear and we don't have much foresight into it. But in case you have any intel, please do share that with us. Apart from that, the other thing that we have added to our radar is the high-level political advocacy forum, which is happening in July. The forum claims to bring together advocates from the G7 countries and beyond to explore conversations around the global health architecture and global order and progress. So as you all might know, we have been part of multiple conversations around the global health architecture. And if those conversations become more central and more key within the space of the high-level political forum, we might consider being there in a more stronger presence as well. Again, in case you have any intel or any other major events that you think need to feature on this list, please do let us know. And just another point on the high-level political forum is that the registrations for that are open and are on first come first serve basis. So that's all for now. Thank you. Over to you, Quentin.
Thanks, Priyanka. First, please do flag anything that is missing on that list. And I think you already have a question, Priyanka, on the dates for the strategic meeting in March. Noting, Bernie, about the usual June date for the HLM, we didn't want to. We have the same feeling that We don't know this time around whether the timing will be as tradition, I will say, and we haven't heard anything around the dates. But if anyone knows when the HLMs, respectively HIV and PPPR HLMs, are scheduled, and if you know anything about the process ahead of that, we know that sometimes there are open preparatory meetings, etc. Please do let us know because we haven't heard anything. Yes, it's 2026 is there at the end of thanks Andre. Indeed in Rio de Janeiro at the end of July.
Tonton, it's Robin here. I just wanted to jump in, if that's okay. I have been in conversation with UNAIDS about the high-level meeting, trying to understand what the process will be. From what I understand from their intel is that the co-facilitators still need to be identified. And once that has happened, which should be by the end of January, that the dates for the high-level meeting will be set. Similar to the past years, the high-level meeting will likely be in June. So either before or after the PCB meeting. So if we work backwards from June, then we can expect the multi-stakeholder hearing or meeting to be held in April. So it's going to be a really compressed timeline in terms of planning for all of that and negotiations around the incoming political declaration. But that's essentially what I've heard so far. Thanks. Over.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Robin. And good to know that we're still looking at June for the HVHL, and it does sound like it's going to be compact, as you said. Any other events that are on your radar that are not appearing there? In particular, we'd be interested to know if any of you have heard of or are interested in engaging more in the high-level political forum. So typically, as Priyanka mentioned, something we engage in, but we feel like it's possible that it might be more relevant this year, considering the changes with the discussions around the transformation of the global health architecture. And anyone has any experience engaging or has any intention of engaging more this year? Don't see a raging crowd in favor of further engagement in the higher-level political forum. All right. So please do feel free to add any events that we're missing in the chat. And I see around women, a question from Pauline around women deliver as well. I don't think we have any plans around it, but we'd be interested to hear from colleagues if we do for the conference in Australia. While you all feel free to add things in the chat, I will move on to our last segment and add these famous last words. We might even finish early today. We want to give a quick brief around the United States MoUs, and for this I will pass the floor to my colleague, Chase.
Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. We know this overview may be repetitive for some, but we also know that it's an opportunity to catch up for others after the holidays, because a lot has happened over the holidays and post-replenishment. And also just to flag that other colleagues who want to add anything after this, please feel free to jump in. Asia, for example, if you want to complement anything that I'm sharing, please feel free to do so. But yeah, just a quick overview. So as many of you know, the US government, and apologies for a few typos on this slide, has started signing bilateral health MOUs. 14 have been signed as of the very end of 2025. Only 3 of those are public. And this slide says promising to resume aid, but that gives a bit too much normalcy to the situation. The reality is that this is a major paradigm shift in the US approach to bilateral aid. We'll talk a bit about the numbers on the next slide, but starting with the qualitative changes, and we don't have a full overview of the extent of those qualitative changes, but we do know that, to begin with, the processes are vastly different. The guidance, it's both granularity and its sharing with civil society and with stakeholders has been severely lacking. Very limited transparency. The window for the process of developing the MOUs has been super accelerated compared to the very extensive process that was undertaken for 1 year planning processes pre-2025, and that civil society and communities have been completely absent from these processes in the context of being invited to participate, and that the plans, which have not yet been developed, but some details are starting to emerge about the kind of blueprint and framework for those plans. What we've seen so far is that there's likely to be a major reduction in the number of targets and their specificity, but that the implementation architecture is still unknown with relation to lots of different factors, including the architecture of implementing partners and the degree and speed of the transition to government funding. Next slide, please. So these qualitative changes are, I think, super important to emphasize, in addition to the headline takeaways about the funding cuts. And again, it's hard to summarize all those qualitative changes in one slide in the time we have. I will put in the chat several different channels which you can continue to follow this. There's, of course, the change calls on Thursday, and I'll put in the chat a link to the WhatsApp group so you can follow that. Partners in Health has started to lead calls on Wednesdays. Actually, it will be right after this call. And I'll share what I believe to be a functioning link for the Teams meetings. And then there's Emily Bass's Substack, which has been a tremendous source of insight into what's going on in these agreements, and just a very relevant resource for you to explore if you have the time. But looking at the headline figures, we see cuts overall. This is just in bilateral aid. As a reminder, it's not related to the multilateral. But in the bilateral, we're seeing a 36% overall cut from the information we have. But these cuts are varying drastically across countries. The MOUs to date, as far as I'm aware, have been for the 5-year period. As some of you may know, the original vision of the strategy shared by the State Department for the new America First Global Health Strategy had implied that there might be different time horizons for different countries, some shorter than 5 years. So as far as I'm aware, the MOUs to date have all been 5 years. But with more countries to come, including countries that have had less significant bilateral relationships in health aid, it'll be relevant to see if that changes, if there are shorter time horizons for some of those countries, particularly in West Africa, for example. And also to note that the cuts across the diseases are not uniform. So the 36% overall funding is not consistent across disease areas. That HIV significantly, but less than some others, which the other areas that might have really significant cuts. And the other point to highlight here is that these cuts are being pushed by the administration, by the executive branch. These are not cuts originating from the political initiative of Congress, which, as of 2025, was still supporting global health at the scale that the U.S. has been for quite a while. So just to highlight a bit the origin of this initiative to push the cuts. And furthermore, with relation to some of these grants, we have seen significant co-financing requirements, and those co-financing requirements, the presentations shared by Chai have really gone into that and showed the scale. So these calls that are happening on Wednesday and Thursday, I think will be opportunity to access some of those overviews. There are still uncertainties about how that co-financing requirement will be enforced, so to speak, and how it might be calculated in practice, and yet just how countries are going to be adapting to that. There is concern that in order to fulfill those co-financing requirements, that there will be some crowding out of potential funding for other health areas. So that's definitely something to follow. And of course, part of the background of this has been the direct implication that these MOUs are in the America First perspective conditioned on transactional deals, many of which might not be specifically explicit in the MOUs or attached as annexes, but are thought to be conditional on those, and that the political support for these MOUs are conditional upon that. And finally, for the implementation, these MOUs are not the implementation plans. Subsequent guidance has been released to provide orientation and guidance on how to develop the implementation plans. Those are supposed to be completed by April 1st, even for those countries that haven't yet completed their MOUs. So it's a very accelerated timeline. And I'll stop there, but invite other colleagues who may add something that I missed, or anything I got slightly wrong, or anything to add. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Delphine, before we move on to other colleagues, if you want to add something, do you want to tell us just a little bit more about the intersection between these MOUs and the PABS discussions?
Yeah, so the discussion on pathogen access and benefit sharing is complex. So I'm not going to try to summarize it too much, but basically the whole idea is about how countries are sharing pathogens that are discovered on their territory, and then what benefits might they get later on if, let's say, a vaccine or a cure is developed from those sequencing. And so that's the overall discussion on the PABs, and there are some discussions as part of these deals that. And as Chase just said, it's not extremely transparent, so we don't know all the conditionality, but that the US might be saying, if we are funding your global health programs, then we get the data. So that whole aspect of how you share the sequence, which was very critical, if you remember, during COVID, and is in overall very critical, is problematic in these deals. I'm not directly following it myself, but I have colleagues with a different hat of mine who are very involved in this, and I know it's very concerning for scientists that work on new pathogen and epidemics.
Thanks a lot, Delphine. Lucy?
Yes, hi everyone, thank you. I have a question. We've heard from some actors, the Center for Global Development, for example, that these MOUs are more formal statements of intent than like that they are not legally binding like contracts. And so maybe if colleagues have information on that, it raises questions on the conditionality aspect, to what extent the country signing these agreements will be committed to provide data, to provide counter conditionalities.
Thanks, Cecile. And Asia, I know you probably have an answer to that. So if you have a question, add that as well. But if you want to help us answer that, that's welcome.
Okay. I think there are many contradictions, and the contradiction. The America First Global Health Strategy is a political document. It's not a technical document. It says what the US wants to achieve, and the MOUs are an instrument in theory toward achieving that. But as such, they contain multiple serious retrogressive moves when it comes to pathogens, benefits, not even sharing, it's extraction, really, as was just mentioned. Also, data sharing. there is, of course, opportunity for pushback and for African governments to set the agenda, but that is extremely difficult, as we've seen time and time again. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is in sharp contrast to how, under multiple administrations, the US used to conduct strategic negotiation around health and diplomacy and health diplomacy. In this case, the US has been completely untransparent and has been excluding directly impacted communities from deliberations and engagement. And both of those things together are extremely objectionable and as it happens, also happen to contradict the so-called principles of the America First Global Health Strategy, because nothing about being untransparent serves anybody's interest. And the administration knows that. They recognize they're being hypocritical and they don't care. So I think I'm not saying that to be inflammatory. It's just the reality and the realpolitik. And the sooner we see it, the sooner we're able to push back in that space, in that same space. Obviously, the US government has invested in the Global Fund, so we can get good outcomes out of a rigged system, and we can continue to do that. And I think I just want to raise sort of 3 action steps to consider. One is all of these deliberations are incredibly important for GC8. That's more sort of at the country level and less at the resource mobilization level. But I think it's really important for making the case for the countries, France, EC, other countries that have not yet stepped up or have pulled back. There's incredibly important stakes to be kind of put forward to them vis-a-vis what's happening with the MoUs, because there's a way that the favorability of multilateralism, the ability to actually see the gaps that are not going away, that the US is doubling down on, that the Global Fund has to be able to provide. And we're happy to talk more with activists across Europe or other countries that want to try to use those concerns as a way to help push and like force the hands of other donors. And then there is, in addition, for any groups with networks in Francophone, African, Caribbean, and Asian countries, there is a convening around advocacy in Francophone countries around the MoUs. If people want to join that effort, just reach out to me or to Chase. And then the next change update call that is about overall efforts to fight back against global health cuts and harmful policies will be on the last Thursday of this month, and I'll send around information to join shortly. But just to say, those kinds of contradictions that you see, please believe your eyes, they're real. And that kind of contradiction and heterogeneity of these MoUs can actually be used to our advantage. The Global Fund has been involved but just at a very I would say just like sitting at the table level. That is to say, Mark was part of the MoU engagement in Kenya. Maybe there's been engagement in other spaces as well. But as I've said, this is an engagement space that is unfriendly to civil society. So it is extremely retrogressive, and it's valuable for every duty bearer to call that out and to push for better approaches. The next phase will be developing so-called implementation strategies. That's actually happening now. And that's a space where if we use leverage from having been pushed out of the room, maybe we can actually try to get into the room for that quarter of developing implementation plans. That's between now up to the end of March. So the stakes, quite frankly, are just getting higher. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Asia. And as usual, we do pass on a lot of information around some of the more dedicated discussion spaces around the MoUs. But do not hesitate to reach out, obviously to Asia, but also to us, if you want to be pointed in the right direction on that front. Any other questions? Any other comments regarding the MoUs? I don't see any.
Yeah, please. I wanted to ask this Abna from MNV. I wanted to ask if you think the other MoUs, you said there were only 3 that are public, if at some point they would also become public, or could we perhaps just dig from the countries to figure that out? Thank you.
So right now, actually, just a slight correction. There's only one MOU that's public, and that's because the government of Kenya released it. The other ones we have, Liberia, Uganda, some folks have a few others, are because they've been leaked to us. So the US has refused to release these MOUs, despite the fact that it was not a big deal under prior administrations to share all of this information openly. And in fact, the terms of the MOUs say that either party can make them public at any time, although they also mention some sort of throwaway language about confidentiality. So that's actually a policy fight we're having right now. We're trying to get Congress and get civil society, including global civil society, to say global health, security, and diplomacy, PEPFAR, malaria, TB, other, excuse me, the background noise, program data are in the dark right now. They actually have to be put back online. They have not been. And all of these materials, the MOUs, the accompanying analyses, the implementation frameworks, all of that needs to be made public, just as had been done in the past, as well as the technical guidance associated with countries developing these materials. GHSD, the program within which PEPFAR lives, has been refusing to share those materials and really hiding its work, which is unacceptable. But we hope that that won't be that way forever.
Okay, many thanks.
Thanks a lot, Asia, and thanks, Sabina, for the question. Any last questions before we move on? All right, then 1, 2. All right. Moving on. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. So the big moment in our agenda for the next month really is the Global Fund board meeting, that will take place February 11th to 13th. And so in 2 weeks, we'll
That's very exciting. And content gets cut off in the middle of this train of thought. There, you're back. Content. It looks like you just got.
Oh no, sorry.
You were just.
It sounded like a very rude interruption from my end because I didn't realize I was off. Apologies, everyone. I see hand raised, Margaret. Just finishing on the quick announcement. So in 2 weeks, we'll have a briefing with the 3 delegations on the coming board meeting. Try to clarify what the stakes are. Oh, I'm cutting down again. And okay, good. And 2 weeks after that, we'll have a call immediately after the board meeting. We'll be debriefing with the 3 delegations as well. That call might be a bit more. We might be able to get through more information on that call because a lot of information around the coming meeting is going to be confidential until the meeting itself. And so the delegations will only be able to share so much in 2 weeks. And finally, there's a GFAN survey that is open. Priyanka has put the link at the top of the chat, but I'm sure she'd be more than happy to put it back further down the chat. And we encourage all of you, you're all members if you're here, to take a minute or two to tell us how we did last year so we can keep improving on our work. And I want to now pass the floor to Margaret. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, and it looks like I think Anthony just put in the chat. I just want to provide some additional information around sort of the US. So as everyone said, really helpful presentation. The MOU process is going forward. In the meantime, Congress, the US Congress, which actually has the power of the purse, according to our Constitution, did just, the appropriators for foreign assistance did just pass a fiscal year 2026 bill that will then be considered by the full House, then the Senate, et cetera, that it's about 10 million less than prior levels for global health funding, but it actually includes $795 million for the President's Malaria Initiative, which is flat funding, $1.25 billion for the Global Fund, and specifically includes language ensuring that the U.S. pays past money due to the Global Fund and considers this new money. It actually has $300 million in funding for Gavi, which had been zeroed out by RFK. So essentially, and this is a bipartisan deal that was struck. So I think we're feeling a little more optimistic in the sense of maybe Congress will actually assert itself more. The challenge, of course, I think we're really going to be heading into a face-off between Congress and the administration, because as we've witnessed and experienced this past year, the challenge is Congress can appropriate money, but if the administration and the Office of Management and Budget refuse to spend it and limit State Department leadership to do that, then that's a real challenge. But there were some positive signals in the bill that suggest that Congress is working to ensure greater accountability. And I know there's going to be the State Department is going to be doing some briefings on Capitol Hill this week. So hopefully Congress will step up and provide more oversight. So lots TBD and very confusing, but I just wanted to provide that context. Very dynamic.
Thanks a lot, Margaret. We have another couple of minutes if anyone has any other announcements, any things that we've missed on our timeline for 2026, any last thoughts around the MOUs, any further criticism of the way the EU is doing kind of the same. Thanks, Adrian, for resources. Yeah, so any further thoughts? And otherwise, we'll be closing the call a little bit early.
And you can all use your time to fill out that survey that Priyanka has put the link to in the chat, given that we're graciously giving you 7 minutes back in your day.
What a wonderful use of everyone's time.
Happy New Year.
All right, then, noting, Annette, your points in the chat, and wishing everyone a good rest of your day. We'll see you all in 2 weeks for Global Fund Board Meeting Brief, and the debrief 2 weeks after that. We look forward to see all of you this year some more. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.